was asked a couple of times to comment on Baby Reindeer, but I resisted commenting on it for two reasons. One is I tried to watch the show, and in the first episode, the representation of the relationship was so true to life based on my experiences that I just couldn't get through it. I couldn't watch it. And then Professor Ed Dutton said to me, "Oh, I want to talk to you about it. I want to interview you about it." So I thought, "Oh God, now I have to push through this thing." So I did. I watched it, and it reminded me of the second reason why I didn't really want to talk about it, which is sometimes I have my moments where I do have this sort of lingering feeling of guilt around making a spectacle of people's mental health issues. Now, I know the writer, Richard Gadd, who did a great job writing it, excellent job acting in it, made himself very, very vulnerable to make it, put himself forward for that. And even so, there was this spectacular nature to it that just made me feel a bit queasy. Plus, everybody's talking about it, so you can cover Baby Reindeer and you're guaranteed clicks and views and engagement and everything. And I was like, "Oh, this is a bit icky." But that aside, I do think there's some things here that should be looked at. One of the first things I wanted to reflect back to you is that when people describe the show to me, and like I have friends and family, they're like, "Oh my God, you've got to watch it. It's very, very relevant to what you do. It's about this crazy woman who's a stalker." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess the show is about a crazy woman who's a stalker." So I watched it, and I was like, "I don't think that's what this story is at all." And it's not my job to defend Richard Gadd. I don't know him. He chose to make the story, and that's fine. But I actually felt like he made an effort to be even-handed and to show that to show that the woman who I don't know about the real world story. I don't want to discuss the real world story because it gets very complicated. But in the paradigms of this fictionalized version of events, the woman who is stalking him, who develops an obsession with him, is in pain herself. And we see in the final scenes, he's very careful to make the point that she is suffering, and she also once was a child. And the reason why she's doing this as an adult is because she suffered so much in her childhood. So I walked away from it not feeling like it was a story about a crazy woman who's a stalker. I was like, I don't think that's a very superficial take. To me, it was a story about very, very lonely people who were so extraordinarily isolated, they were driven mad. I think it's significant that the story takes place in London. Like all cities, is very, very difficult. London is a particularly difficult city to live in. It's a very, very lonely and isolating place that can make you feel extremely alienated. The people who develop their, the main author, the main actor, and the woman he's involved with, and the other characters. There are multiple characters in this show who are all on some spectrum of mental illness. They are not well, and they're largely not well because of the context in which they exist. So to cover the first thing, is it a simple stalking story? No. And I don't think he's presented it that way, because he openly admits that he was lonely and that when she disappeared, he drew her back in, not once, but several times. So this isn't the story of classic psychopathic stalking where the victim is selected for whatever reason and then just can't get away from the person who's pursuing them. There was an element in him, and he made it clear that he wanted to be looked at. He wanted to be on stage. He wanted to be observed. He wanted to be seen. And that there was a need within him, however neurotic, however unhealthy, to have this woman idealize him narcissistically. So she engages in what some people call love bombing. It's probably better referred to as narcissistic idealization. That's part of the name, the title, Baby Reindeer. She's not, I think his name, the real world man, is called Richard Gadd, but I think the character is called Donnie. She's not interacting with the real Donnie. She's idealizing and objectifying him to make him into the same cuddly, fluffy toy that she had as a child, that she would focus on when she was stressed out by her parents' arguments. And she essentially made a fetish of. We've discussed this before on the channel. Fetishes are not always sexual. The original meaning, before Freud got hold of it, of fetish meant, shamans, witch doctors would hold a fetish. It meant that there was something that they had that was imbued with magical power that didn't have any power of its own. The ancestor's bone, magic wand, a sacred skull, a chalice that has touched the lips of the savior, whatever. The object itself has no power, but it's imbued magically with power. With sexual fetishes, it's imbued with libidinous energy. It's made sexual, and that's why it's called sexual fetish, because the thing is not intrinsically sexual in and of itself. It's imbued with sexuality. It's imbued with the beholder's libidinous energy. So she fetishizes him. She obsesses over him, not as the man he is, but as the fetishized, static, dead object. And nothing could be more reliable. Nothing could be more dependable. Nothing could be less likely to abandon you than a stuffed toy, than a dead object. She's not looking for a live object. She's looking for a dead object. And that's what she wants to make of him. Why does she select him? Well, in a way, they select each other. His unboundaried, not compassion, wasn't compassion, it was pity. He pitied her. And his unboundaried, immature, he's a young man, naive. I'm not persecuting him. It was immature, it was naive. And he made this gesture of pity towards her, and she fixated on that. In a world, in a barren landscape where she's only seen through whatever role she can perform professionally and is not seen as sexually desirable, is not being approached by multiple men, especially not, I think in the story, she's in her 40s, he's 25. You know, she's in a barren landscape, a desert of sexual interaction, flirtation, whatever it is. And then this one man, this good-looking young man, seems to show an interest in her. And then the story, yes, it's a story of stalking. She's got it in the fiction. She has a history of stalking, but I think it's better seen as a story of a kind of a folie à deux. There are two people here who are significantly mentally unwell. This woman, at regular intervals, we learn, becomes obsessed with a person, could be a public figure. That's implied that she stalked the deaf child of a barrister, and so on and so forth. The other character struggling with his personal identity, struggling with a sexual identity, using drugs, using alcohol to cope, becomes the victim of a sexual assault, which I don't want to psychoanalyze from across the room, but I seriously doubt that was the first time that happened in his life arc, and then engages in these bouts of almost manic promiscuity to deal with his own feelings. These are two mentally ill people who are reflecting each other's pathologies and going back and forth in a kind of sick dance that can only lead to pain and catastrophe and tragedy. But that's what's happening within the story. The woman is displaying the signs of erotomania. Erotomania is something that can happen online. So in erotomania, it's typically women. It's a very rare subtype of delusional disorder. It affects women more than it affects men. The object of the obsession is typically a male, and usually a male who is above or beyond their social status or their, I don't know how else to say it, like relative attractiveness in their dating hierarchy, or however you choose to phrase that. And she becomes infected with the obsessive, persistent, irresistible conviction that this man is in love with her. She's not obsessed with the idea that she's in love with him. She experiences it subjectively as the persistent, obsessive conviction: this man loves me. This man is obsessed with me. This man needs me. And then she, in her turn, gravitates towards not the reality, but the delusional fantasy. I know that this man loves me. And then a story in her mind is constructed of a relationship that could be, as we saw in Baby Reindeer, he's offered her a few cups of tea. I think they've shared a few drinks and a few jokes together. She came to watch him do his stand-up comedy, but really nothing else has happened. But so you have a fairly friendly interaction that's occurred, but that she has made into this huge delusional fantasy, this huge story. This can happen even when the two people have never met. I've had experience of this over the last now 11 years of working in this space online multiple times. People who send, women who will send me 80 to 100 emails every day, voice notes on Instagram, DMs on Instagram. They make posts about me. They Photoshop pictures of me and them that you can clearly see as a Photoshop, put them together. It's really bad work. And then post it on Facebook and post it on Instagram and say, this is my boyfriend, Richard Crannan. This is my boyfriend. And then when that's not reciprocated, a story is created where they have been abused, betrayed, and discarded because the object of their affection in the erotomaniac fantasy has frustrated them. So they've gone from idealization to what's the opposite of idealization? Oh, well, it leads to the discard phase. Tell me in the comments, what's the opposite of idealization? My brain's a bit fried today. On the opposite side of idealization, anyone? That's a pretty key thing that I've just forgotten. So I know that this happens, and that's why it was hard for me to watch the show initially. Devaluation. Bonnie says, who wrote denunciation? It's not villainizing, yes. Devaluation. Somebody wrote denunciation. Yes, it can lead to denunciations, but it's actually a devaluation. So I know this has happened multiple times over the years. It's very difficult, as Richard Gadd, or the character he plays, Donnie, whatever his name is trying to deal with it with the police. I've had those conversations. I've had conversations with police, with lawyers, and they're like, there's really nothing realistically anybody can do about this. You just have to deal with it. So the story to me was one of an exploration of what happens to people when they're crushed by loneliness, when they're alienated. They're inside of a culture, but it's an alienating culture. They're inside of a culture, but they really have no normal, healthy, significant connections with other human beings. And I don't want to sound like a stock record, but this is where I think an awful lot of the mental health issues the explosion that we're seeing today is coming from is that we're not a good evolutionary match for the culture that we've created. We are not now moving nomadically in tribes of 150. And I'm not a troglodyte saying that we should go and live, I don't know, on the savannas again. You can't do that. You can't put the toothpaste back into the tube. But I think it would be useful to recognize that long-term isolation, long-term alienation and loneliness will drive people completely insane. One of the things I discussed with Ed, with Professor Ed Dutton in the interview with him, was where the sexual paraphilias can come from. And the next day, Ed messaged me and he sent me an article and he said, I've read this before, but I forgot when you asked me. Sexual paraphilias, as demonstrated in baby reindeer, can be brought on by intense stress. So people who are very, very stressed for a prolonged period of time, or very, very sad, or full of grief for prolonged periods of time, they can develop sexual paraphilias and disturbances in sexual identity. And from that point of view, I thought that the show was great in its willingness to show that vulnerable side of human nature. And it was also very sad at points. It really made me feel very, very sad for the people in the story. And, it moved me at points. I felt very, very sorry for him, and I felt very, very sorry for her. And I sort of felt this sense that it's so tragically sad that so many people are living a variation of these lives. Go to work, don't really have proper friends, aren't really seen. They're not really seen by anyone. They're not really a contributing member of a tribe. They don't enjoy the sort of the benefits of feeling themselves to be a necessary part of the system. Is it Gabor Mate that said that there's a Hungarian phrase that you only have a home, or it means you have a home if when you leave, people miss you? Is that true? Did I make it up? Gabor Mate is Hungarian, but is that a Hungarian phrase? Did I get that from him? You only have a home if when you leave, people miss you. And I wonder, I'm in a city right now, I'm in Liverpool, I'm looking out over the city, and this place is full of people who are from all over the world. Some are here to study, some are here to work. And I'm looking at lights. Most of what is around me is apartments. As in most cities, people just live in boxes in order to fulfill their duty to their corporate commanders. I wonder how many of them feel like they have a home, or where they are not, they are missed. And so I don't like this summing up of Baby Reindeer as being the story of a madwoman who's a stalker. I think that really, really misses the point, and it's very, very unfair to the work that was put into it and the way it was written. I don't think that's the story. I think it's a story of humanity, alienation, and of being driven completely insane by loneliness and self-denial, because a big part of the story is him feeling like he can't tell his parents that he's not necessarily straight, that he might be bisexual. And so he starts with a tremendous amount of guilt and shame, which she, of course, leverages, because there are elements of psychopathic and narcissistic abuse here. And you could even say sadism, because she's frustrated with him as the object of the object of her affections in her erotomaniac delusion. It's almost like, well, if I can't have you, why should anyone have you? And then I think at points she really did fly the character, not the real person, because I don't know the real person, into a narcissistic rage, and then go all out to try to destroy his reputation, to destroy his father's reputation, to affect his family, and to be as much of a nuisance as possible. And even with all that sadism and nastiness and darkness and cruelty and willful destructiveness, you can still feel compassion for the child that she was before this happened. This was created in an inordinately painful childhood environment. So that's 20 minutes and 16 seconds. I think I did okay on that one, folks. So let's do some questions and then I'll wrap it up because yeah, there are scenes of, if you're going to watch Baby Reindeer, there are scenes of SA in it that are that are tough. They're tough to watch. Wasn't she the audience he craved? Now he has a global one. I think that if you want to view it through the lens of narcissism, she was weak, temporary narcissistic supply. That wasn't the drug that he was looking for, but it was the drug he could get. Will you write a second book? Oh, I'll write multiple books. I just need to live somewhere. I'm just trying to move to a place so I can live in a house and then I can do these things. I'd like to write some fiction. Do you consider yourself a life coach? No. No. Have you watched the interview? That would be another good one for a chat. I don't know. Like I said at the beginning, you probably missed it. I don't know how I feel about all this stuff. Like I resisted talking about baby. If Ed Dutton hadn't pushed me to do it, and I'm glad he did, I wouldn't have talked about it because I feel very uncomfortable with making people's mental health issues public and then a spectacle. And so the interview with this woman, much like Baby Reindeer, you know when everybody has a joke and it's like an inside joke, and then you take the piss out of your mate, and we all know that we're taking the piss out of him or her, but we're doing it out of love. But then there's somebody there who's laughing along, who's not really their friend, and they're not laughing in the way that you're laughing. There's something nasty there. So I think there's a lot of people who come as audience members to something like that, and their intentions are nasty. They're really just trying to lord it over that woman and be like, look at what a weirdo she is. Look at what an idiot she is. And I'm not saying because she has mental health issues, she should be forgiven for doing whatever the hell she wants. We're all adults, we're all human beings. You've got to be held to account. I just feel a bit funny about it. I feel a bit like, it can drift into scapegoating. It can drift into burn the witch. It can drift into sneering in this town. Because we're sort of in the realm of reality TV. This is like next level reality TV. Years ago, in 2002, I met the producers of Big Brother, and I was offered to do a show, and it wasn't Big Brother. It was a different show. People who know Big Brother, they know the production company, and these were the people behind the production company, and they were scumbags. Scumbags. They were so slimy. They emanated evil and contempt for humanity. And the way they were describing the show that they wanted me on was I was going to help them to take the piss out of people who aren't very bright. And the way they were talking about people, who just happen to have been born with a lower IQ than them. It was just, some of this stuff gets really mean-spirited, really, really, really nasty, really quickly. And I can't have anything to do with it. So I probably won't watch that interview because I know what an erotomaniac is like. I know what somebody with BPD and childhood trauma is like. I know she's going to dig herself a bigger hole as she tries to dig her way out of it. I've had plenty of experience with people like this. And I know somebody told me she made herself look worse than he did in the show. And I was like, well, that's textbook, isn't it? That's textbook. She tried to make herself look better and she made herself look worse. So I don't know. I'm not being judgy. Like if you want to watch it, then it's fine. It's out there. Who wouldn't want to watch that? I'm just saying I feel a bit weird about it, and that's just because of my job. Any ideas who the Predator TV producer is? No. Who would you say is bolstering others to use their agency? Who would you say? What, in society in general? I don't understand that question, sorry. Are they both BPD? They're both very, very damaged human beings. And the damage is showing up in different ways. They both have a labile sense of self. They're both very, they have attachment issues, they have fear of abandonment issues, they're self-destructive, they're obsessive. But I don't know, you're asking me to just analyze characters, which I'm happy to do. If it's just characters in a show, then it's fine. It's real people you can't do that with. They were probably on the spectrum, I would think, clinically. Like clinicians would look at them and go, okay, there's probably some degree of borderline personality disorder here. But BPD rarely occurs in a vacuum. There's usually comorbidities. What's the difference between eroticism and limerence, or are they the same? Eroticism, no, I don't think eroticism as eroticism. Let me look that up for you before I say something stupid. A quality that causes sexual feelings, from eros, Greek, and ism, as well as a philosophical contemplation concerning the aesthetics of sexual desire, sensuality, and romantic love. Because the nature of what is erotic is fluid, early definitions of the term attempted to conceive eroticism as some form of sensual or romantic love, or as the human sex drive. So eroticism is that which evokes lust, I guess. Limerence is a state of mind which results from romantic feelings for another person and typically includes intrusive, melancholic thoughts or tragic concerns for the objects of one's affection, as well as a desire to form or maintain a relationship with the object of love and to have one's feelings reciprocated. So that's how the different. A tip for being a solid bloke. Enjoy your weekend, you bloody NPD loon. Will, thank you very much. Little Milky says, whatever your story is, mine will be better. Have you read Three Body Problem? Read Three Body Problem. I think it's the best sci-fi trilogy I've ever read in my life. It's so good. I'm edging towards the end of book 3. It's brilliant. Oh, hang on. Sorry. I see a little of myself in the main character, but he is definitely a very messed up and obviously traumatized individual. Peter says, I've no real interest in watching Baby Reindeer, but I've appreciated listening to your take on it. Can you recommend another sci-fi movie instead? You can watch Three Body Problem on Netflix. They're sort of, one's inspired by the other kind of a thing, but they're different entities. And I really thought the Netflix effort with Three Body Problem was great. Plus it has our man Benedict Wong in, and we support Benedict Wong in everything that he does. I just got divorced from a man who, in my opinion, was a covert narcissist. Do you think I'll ever be able to get over the damage and have a healthy relationship? Yes, you can, but you must deconstruct the shared fantasy, the narcissistic matrix that you created with that person. I have a course on doing that. It's called Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse. You should also seek therapy from a qualified counselor or therapist who can guide you through that process. Oh, folks, if you want to stream the seminar this weekend, I just put a video up on YouTube on how to do that. It's really simple. You just go to the website where it says community in the top bar, join the community. It is a membership site, and people are messaging me going, oh, I don't want to be in a membership site. What if I need to cancel? You just send a message to helpdesk@spartanlifecoach.info and say, I want to cancel. You don't have to say, because my cat died, or because I don't like the color of your socks. You don't have to give me any reason whatsoever. You just say, I just want to cancel, and that'll be that. So if you want to watch it, it is being live streamed to community members. That's the new membership area of richardgrannon.com. When you go in, go to your library, because you get a bunch of other courses there as part of being a community member. Scroll all the way down to the bottom. It says Liverpool live stream. you log in, you have to download Zoom. The reason for that, Zoom is lightweight, it's bug-free, and if you download it, when you watch it through Zoom, that means you can ask us questions. You can ask me and the other speakers questions live. So that's why we're using Zoom for it. Death in Venice is a terrible book they made us read in school, which has all the dynamics described from the outlook of an old man stalking a boy. Read it? I haven't. I've never read Death in Venice. It doesn't sound like something I would enjoy. I find that a bit #triggering. Old men stalking boys. Is there a cover charge for what? Cover charge? That's for bread and water, isn't it? A cover. How do you know if you're in denial about your relationship? And if you are, how do you come out of denial? I got interviewed today by Nyla again. And how do you know if you're in denial? If you're looping again and again and again past 4 or 5 incidents of boundary breaking and or borderline incidents of abuse and or lying and or clear evidence that the things that they say don't match their actions, then you're in denial. How do you come out of denial? Well, you have to be very courageous, because if you come out of denial, you're going to lose the relationship. So what is the cost of coming out of denial? It's losing the relationship. Can you bear that cost? If the answer is no, then you can't come out of denial. So you have to convince yourself in a conversation with yourself that you are strong enough and courageous enough to bear the cost of the relationship ending. Would you move to Canada, Richard? No, it's snowy and cold, isn't it? Oh, I need heat. I need the sun. Oh yeah, no, it's not free. No, the people who are coming to the seminar, they've paid. The ones who are coming in real life, the access to the community is not free. No, it's a paid service. If you feel confused all the time, that is a really good indication that you're in an emotionally abusive relationship, a psychologically abusive relationship, and potentially a narcissistically abusive relationship. So that's good advice. Defense mechanism. My favorite topic, says True Seder. Why is it, asks Francesca, why is it that even years can go by without physically seeing them, yet there are still intrusive thoughts of them? Because when we enter into the narcissistically abusive relationship, we're effectively entering into a cult with just you and the cult leader. So one follower, one leader. And the narcissistically abusive relationship is not like a normal relationship. You're entering into a simulated version of reality that they create. So I refer to this as the Matrix, like the movie The Matrix. You trade off your sovereignty, your critical thinking skills, your capacity to know right from wrong, in order to be in that simulated reality with them and in order to experience it with them. When the relationship ends, the Matrix, the shared fantasy space that is created between the two of you, doesn't end. You have to actually put in work to dismantle that shared fantasy space. Otherwise, they will continue to have intrusive thoughts. I have a course that helps you to do that. It's called Unplug from the Matrix of Narcissistic Abuse. It's available on richardgrannon.com. And it specifically breaks down how to deal with this shared fantasy matrix space. You must get rid of it. And the best, you can get far with just a course, but it's good if you can find a therapist or a counselor who's got experience in narcissistic abuse recovery to chat to as well. Lily says, I'm appreciating your book, Richard, just nearing the end of chapter 2. Thank you for your life-saving videos, especially the sci-fi analogies. Really helps. Thank you very much. If you like sci-fi, you've got to read Three-Body Problem. My God, it's so good. I haven't enjoyed a book this much in a long time. I'm just like turning the pages going, this is great. I hope it never ends. How do you co-parent with a narcissist whilst also dealing with betrayal PTSD? With great difficulty. I've heard people say there's no co-parenting with a narcissist. It's counter-parenting. And if you're dealing with other forms of trauma, I suggest you get as much help as you can. Don't try to deal with it on your own. If you can get help, then please do. Jade says, can the manipulation that happens in this cult of one be called or likened unto grooming? I don't usually call it grooming. I leave the word grooming for grooming, because I was groomed as a kid. So I want that to maintain its meaningfulness. I would say, you can say brainwashing, you can say entrainment, but grooming, let me check so I don't say something stupid. Yeah, sexual grooming is the action or behavior used to establish an emotional connection with a minor. So there has to be a child involved, and sometimes the child's family, to lower the child's inhibitions with the objective of sexual abuse. So that word should be left just for that. Some theorists consider what narcs and psychopaths do to be the grooming of adults. I get it, but grooming is specifically done by adults against minors to disinhibit them from sexual abuse. And I think we can leave that term for that. I think we should leave that term just for that. Are you all interested in neuroscience? Yes, I am. There will be some videos on neuroscience coming up in the not too distant future. Richard, I agree about that shared fantasy. Made me feel like I was 16 years old again. In the end, I suddenly left. He was deviant and psychotic. What if the narcissist replaces you with another lover? Oh, they will. And then keeps both relationships simultaneously. Then he hasn't replaced you. That's awful. If he's a serial cheater, I was the girlfriend for 2 years and I became the secret lover. Did you do that knowingly or unknowingly? Am I likely to find narcissists, psychopaths, and sadists in 12-step programs? AA, CA. Narcissists, psychopaths, sadists, dark tetrad personality types are probably making up between 5 to 7% of the human population. So if you take 100 tennis players, 5 to 7 of them are going to be significantly on the spectrum for dark tetrad traits. So likely, I don't know, possibly. I'd need to look at the narcissism rates. Well, actually, I do know that narcissism specifically and psychopathy is frequently comorbid with substance abuse. So yeah, there's research on that. You can put it into Google Scholar. Narcissism and alcohol abuse, psychopathy, drug abuse, that kind of thing. Erocs have bad experiences. They flood 12-step rooms. Do you remember Fight Club? Do you think Fight Club, you think about Ed Norton getting punched in the face and Brad Pitt's 8-pack. We don't remember Helena Bonham Carter, Marla Singer. Marla Singer and the Ed Norton character, who's never named, are kind of these BPD characters who are addicted to going to recovery groups. It's actually a pretty cool concept. That's how they meet each other. They're addicted to pretending to have issues and illnesses that they don't have so that they can drink free coffee and get free hugs. That's Fight Club. I don't know anything about this. I'm just referencing a piece of fiction. Do you think the propelled tech age made MPD extremely prevalent? I wouldn't really blame tech, because tech can be used, well, tech is just a tool. It's the craftsperson and the user that's responsible for how it's used. We collectively, humanity, has chosen corporatism, cronyism, consumerism forms of capitalism. And once we've done that, we humans employ the tech as a catalyst for that. A lot of the drivers for our psychological issues are, honestly, they're economic. If you get right down to it, they're driven by economics. So the reason there's an explosion in narcissism when at root is economic, and consumer capitalism, corporate capitalism, cronyist capitalism is, you know, it has a lot to do with that. I'm not a socialist, I'm just saying. I just learned in ancient Greece, adult men used to sleep this, boys, and that was considered normal. You just learned that? Whilst homosexuality was considered wrong. Any thoughts on that? This is not correct. Or this is not universally agreed upon. And when we say ancient Greece was made up of many cultures, and some of them conflicted. Some of them did things very differently. So in Sparta, the boys were raised homosexual first, and then they could have sex with women after they'd had sex with each other as boys. With girls, and I think it was around the age of 14 or 15. But when a female, let's say, and a young female and a young male were paired, the female would cut her hair short and wear a boy's nightshirt the first few times that they had sex, so that he would feel like that was more normal. I did hear somebody describing that if you were the top in Greece, that was okay, but being a bottom in Greece was considered not okay. I don't know. I don't know if we could just say like Greek culture, just the whole of Greek culture was like this. It was probably different rules, different places, different time periods. These things tend to be fairly plastic. And I'm not sure that men just had a free for all with boys, and it was considered normal. I don't know if it was considered normal. We'd need to get a Greek historian in to tell us that. It's too early for this. I do apologize. I don't know how we got onto that subject. I don't even know why I answered that question. I could have just ignored it. Yes, sorry about that. I hear there's an African tribe that still does it. There is. There absolutely is, yes. It's part of the rites of initiation. Yeah, I'm not a Greek historian. You should ask a Greek historian about that. And the last time I looked, there wasn't a consensus. Wow, Spartans did that? Yep. And they were considered, for a lot of what they did, they were considered total degenerates. Even, I think the Athenians regarded their, because they also engaged in, obviously they had slaves. A lot of cultures back then had slaves. Eugenics, they were engaged in eugenics, and they trained a lot. And there was this weird sort of Athenian view I read that was considered degenerate, that you shouldn't be training all the time to win in battle. That's sort of like cheating. You should train less and just rely on your raw Greek masculinity. It's fascinating culture, but there's a reason why I moved away from the Spartan life coach name. Was the more I learned about Sparta, I was like, okay, there's an awful lot of, I mean, it was effectively the first attempt to the first highly successful attempt that we have a lot of historical record of militarizing a culture through trauma, through massive trauma, and they did a very good job. It was like a sort of a special forces culture, if you consider it in the context of the time in which it took place. Okay, I'll answer a couple more questions, and there's probably Time for bed. Do not train to win. It is degenerate. Yeah. You'll have to look at that. And they predicted the fall of Sparta, and they were right, actually, in the end. Again, not a Greek historian. We're doing a lot of Greek history tonight, so I'm blagging because I don't know enough. I'm totally addicted and have reached rock bottom as far as humiliation is concerned, being replaced, as you call it. But he won't let me go. He keeps me in the loop. So how do I let go and get out? Give up. He's not keeping you in anything. You're keeping yourself in the loop. Give up. Yeah, like, if you don't want what's going on, then you have to let go of it. Now, if what you're saying is, and you want to ask a different question, which is, I don't feel strong enough to walk away from this just now. That's a different question. But it doesn't lay all the agency at his feet. Then the agency goes back to you. Right now, and there's no shame in it. You just say, I'm not strong enough to give this up just yet. That's okay. But at least now we're focusing on the right thing in the system, not the wrong thing. Who's this guy? What's he going to do if you just disappear tomorrow? There's nothing he can do. Oh, yeah. Yes, I'm stuck. I know. I've been there. But stay focused. Just tell yourself the truth. Like, right now, I don't feel strong enough to walk away from this. Okay, that implies that at some point in the future, you might feel strong enough to walk away from this. This looks like a young man. Well, before you go, appreciate your work. Been following your channel for about 6 months. Thank you for contributing to the knowledge of dealing with narcissists. You're very welcome. Very welcome. Glad to have you here. Richard, what is loot? How is your health? My health is good. Like, the thing that was going to kill me seems to have gone. I'm in a lot of pain with my shoulder at the moment, which has never happened before. I went for acupuncture the other day, and then we did dry needling today. Have you tried dry needling? That is a truly shocking form of therapy. Does the shared fantasy stay in the MPD person's head that you had with you after the breakup? Not necessarily. Well, okay. Are you ready? Brace yourself for a very unpleasant answer. Yes, the shared fantasy remains. It just doesn't include you. We're all replaceable to the narcissist. The next person is the new shared fantasy. So the shared fantasy stays the same. You're out. That one's in. It's like a narcissistic psychopathic director of a movie. She's no longer the star. She wasn't doing what she's told. This one's the star now. Not very nice. Sorry, but it's the truth. Yeah, they pick up the next supply. Very true. Very painful. Very sad. Have you tried a chiropractor? I'll try one next. If this doesn't improve, I will try one next. So that will be all, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Thank you very much for your time and for your attention. I appreciate it. If you're joining us on the live stream for the Liverpool seminar, I look forward to seeing you there. Thank you very much, and I will speak to you soon.